Hello, and welcome to Songwriters Spotlight, the Western Mass Songwriters Collaborative Series. I'm Dr. Dan, your host of the show, where we feature Western Mass songwriters who perform their original songs and talk about the art of songwriting. Stay tuned to explore more about music and the tunesmithing that creates it.
Our guest in this episode is Mark Nomad, a performer known for his great lead vocals and brilliant guitar. We'll look at his songwriting side, listening to his songs and talking about his songwriting.
Well, this one's called Coming Home to You, and what's interesting about this song is, I wrote it as really a love song to, God, heaven, if you will, but many have taken this song to be a love song. And this radio station in California, my gosh, they just played it all the time. It might have been a theme for somebody's show, but I think they thought it was the love song. But I often like to write, with a couple of meanings. Probably too much. TMI.
No, that sounds great.
I'm coming home to you. The road gets weary, there's much to do. Eyes get bleary, but I'm coming home to you. You know I've been waiting, yes you know it's true. Be no hesitating, I'm coming home to you. Life's been one long ramble, but my aim is true. Road is filled with brambles, but I'm coming home to you. Paid the cost. Lessons haven't learned when love's been lost. Your song rings like a bell coming from above. I just want to dwell in your sea of love. You know I've been waiting, yes you know it's true. Be no hesitating, I'm coming home to you. Not one long ramble, but my aim is true. Road is filled with brambles, but I'm coming home to you.
Was written, it'll be 25 years ago in a few weeks. A true story, I was at the Cooley Dickinson Hospital waiting for the entree, the premiere of a baby. Did not even know, what this baby was going to be, and was delighted to find out it was a daughter as she made her debut. And I was messing around on my other national, and I was doing something like, and I got this idea for this song, and I wrote it while I was waiting. It's called Waiting on You. time, but in your private suite, you're cozy, warm, and blue, fine. Don't blame you for taking all your sweet time, waiting on you. Yeah, we're waiting on you. What you gonna do? Yeah, we're waiting on you. Don't mind us, but we really, really wanna meet you. Waiting on you. Yeah, we're waiting on you. What you gonna do? Yeah, we're waiting on you. Don't mind us, but we really, really wanna meet you. Okay. This next one was the title of my second CD, and the title track from the last millennium, way back. It's so old. It's the CD's out of print, but it's called "Got to Carry On." And the interesting thing is, it's going on 30 years. I wrote this song, and I think it's more apropos now than it was then. I got to carry on. I'm tired of all the fighting, tired of the backbiting, I'm tired of all the sliding, but gotta carry on. I'm tired of all the lying, tired of all the buying, I can't keep from crying, but gotta carry on. This world is in a tangle, boy, she's the mango, like Billy Dangle, but we gotta carry on. We're living here for schooling, get past all the ruling. God ain't a fooling, we gotta choose love, gotta choose love, gotta choose love. Gotta stop polluting, is that so highfalutin? We gotta stop the shooting, ain't no way to carry on. I'm tired of all the lying, tired of all the buying, I can't keep from crying, but gotta carry on. This world is in a tangle, war machines the mango, lost belly dangle, but we gotta carry on. We're living here for schooling, get past all the drooling. This next one was a song written, several years ago, and certainly there was a muse. It's called Poetry in Motion.
Poetry in motion, perfect in design. I'm gonna love her an ocean, my oh my. Long leg woman, go on 4 days. Real good woman, when she come my way, come up from Raleigh, chase a dream. Hello, darling. Don't you ever leave. Poetry in motion, I'm gonna love her an ocean, my oh my, yeah.
This song is called Took More Than You Gave. I gave you my heart, but you took my soul. I knew from the start it would take a toll. I gave you my heart, but you took my soul. And at the end of the day, you took more than you gave. I dropped down on one knee when I gave you that ring. 10th anniversary didn't mean a thing. Dropped on one knee when I gave you that ring. And at the end of the day, you took more than you gave. live your dream, no regard for mine. Said we were a team, but that was a lie. You live your dream with no regard for mine. And at the end of the day, you took more than you gave. At the end of the day, you took more than you gave. This next song is an acoustic version of the reworking that I did of a song that goes back to the 80s. The original 80s version was kind of a, poppy, new wavy kind of a tune, and then I rearranged it in the early aughts and with a full band, and we recorded it. It's on one of my records. But then I decided I wanted to do a solo acoustic version of it. That silly game with you, jumping all across the board, sometimes backwards, sometimes forward. You're on my mind all of the time. My moves are not like Chinese checkers. On my mind all of the time. Can't get enough. All those rainy afternoons. Why did they have to end so soon? I put a log into the fire, flame burned just like my desire. You're on my mind all the time. My moves are not like Chinese checkers. On my mind all the time. Can't get enough. You're on my mind all the time. My moves are not like Chinese checkers. On my mind all the time. Can't get enough of those Chinese checkers with you. As long as it's with you, babe. With you. There's only you, babe. I get to play with you. No matter what goes on outside, the inside's where I'm satisfied. You're on my mind all of the time. I love the lot like Chinese checkers. On my mind all of the time. Can't get enough. On my mind all of the time. I love the lot like Chinese checkers. Can't get enough.
Okay. So, a wonderful set of music, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
I really enjoyed it, and You've written a good number of songs, have you not?
Yes, many, many.
When did you start?
I remember starting during the summer of '70. You know, I had just finished my my first year at college, and I started just the need to express myself musically, because I had already been playing for about 5 years. You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a band in high school and stuff, but that summer I started writing, and you know, we were talking about Duane Allman earlier, who their first record was out then, and I was aware of Slide, and I actually a friend of mine, she emptied her mother's medicine bottle, and it was a glass bottle. And Duane Allman used the Coricidin bottles, and so I started dabbling with you know, the slide on the guitar, and some songs started coming out, and that kind of started my my writing. Usually, I had muses, you know. I remember one song I wrote, "Lady Friend," might have been the first song that I ever wrote, and then you know, as time went on, it started to be, it wasn't a matter of wanting to write songs. It was kind of like having to write songs, you know, because as we were discussing earlier, you know, now that we're hopefully getting post-COVID, we've had to go without live music and gigging, and it's so therapeutic for artists. I mean, people, whether they paint or write, I think art is therapy, and it's therapy for the people who enjoy it. So the writing thing was kind of therapeutic for me.
Uh-huh. Well, who were your muses, your songwriting muses?
Well, I've always, you know, I have this this triumvirate that I joke about: music, food, and love. You know, depending on the time of day, the order can switch around. But certainly, my first songs were, you know, in regards to, you know, women that I may have had crushes on, or something like that. And you know, I was music was religion. Going to see shows, you know, growing up with the radio on, loudly, because my mother was legally deaf, so she played the radio loud. And you think about the wonderful playlists on AM radio, top 40 radio. You could hear Louis Armstrong, and then the Beatles, and then James Brown, you know, and then Herb Alpert and Frank Sinatra, and then maybe, you know, some rock and roll, you know, snuck in there, something a little harder. So this wonderful variety of music was on the airwaves, and it just became something that I loved and listened to. But the Beatles, of course, set it all in motion for me, you know. Of course, I mean, I loved rock and roll, but I was a little boy in the 50s, and I was very aware of Elvis. But I was a little boy. I remember when he was going into the Army, it was a big deal, you know. And then, as we've discussed before, the first wave of rock and roll kind of, you know, went away, and that was the real stuff. Chuck Berry, you know, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly. And there was a tepid period. Not that there wasn't good stuff, but it wasn't what it was. And then the British invasion just blew it open. And of course, many of us boomers just happened to be going through puberty at that time. And I think that just heightens the awareness of these love songs and these this cool beat and groove, you know. So, long answer to your question.
So, so in terms of, you know, songwriting, is there someone who inspired you or influenced your songwriting style?
Well, I mean, you know, of course, in addition to digging this British invasion, those of us that were curious, you know, say, wait, who, you know, who wrote that, you know? Yeah. And of course, the Beatles really established themselves. They wrote their own material, and that was something that I regarded as special, you know. I mean, you know, not to take anything away from the great singers. You know, but you know, back in the days of Sinatra and and you know, Perry Como and people like that. There were writers, then there were arrangers, there were producers, and then the singers just sang, and they were very, very good. But in rock and roll, you didn't always have to have, you know, a Pavarotti type voice. You know, you just, you know, in fact, that would hinder the rasp and the, you know, sometimes the feeling in rock and roll. So I started paying attention. Brian Wilson, I was aware that he was writing a lot of the Beach Boys songs, and Bob Dylan. There was a show called Hootenanny. I don't believe that Dylan was on it, but I started tuning into that whole folk music too, which kind of preceded the British invasion. So I really appreciated people that wrote their own tunes, but then I started going back. You realize that most of these British invasion people, the first wave, you know, Herman's Hermits, Wonderful World, that was a Sam Cooke tune, you know? I Like It Like That by Dave Clark 5. I think this R&B group I think they were from New Orleans, called the Contours, where, you know, a lot of the artists were not writing their own songs, they were just redoing songs. And that's cool, because I do my covers too, you know, but I started paying attention to who was writing. I didn't necessarily write, I was inspired by them, but I didn't necessarily try to sound like them, because I think you have to hear what's coming through yourself as a channel, you know, what you hear in your head. So, but I was definitely influenced by all those people. And then, of course, I discovered blues. And I didn't write a blues song for years. I wouldn't write one. I didn't feel like I was worthy. I would rather cover a song by Muddy Waters or Howlin' Wolf or B.B. King, because those guys have had experience. They lived it. I'm just an interpreter. But then, you know, as I started getting into my 30s and had some living under my belt, I said, I'm going to write my own blues, you know?
Yeah. So when you sit down to write a song, is there a process involved?
You know, I don't really have a process per se, but usually it starts with the music. Every once in a while, though, I'll have a phrase, and that's a pretty cool phrase. I'm going to write that down. But you know, 99% of the time, I write the lyrics to the music. I get the music down. I may have a hook, I may have a sentence, but the music comes. And how the music comes can be the darndest ways and places. You know, you can be in the shower, and all of a sudden this melody starts coming through your head. Or oftentimes sitting on the couch and strumming, and something may come through. You know, in the 70s, I had this rock and roll band that started off being very blues influenced, but we also would combine stuff that we liked as well, covers. You know, we did, Arthur Lee in that band Love from the, you know, in the mid-60s, he was brilliant. And we would do one of his songs and then go into a slow B.B. King blues, because we wanted to do that. We made it work. So I have all these influences coming through. And but there was also, because we had two lead guitarists, I wanted to practice my lead guitar, because you know, in the early mid-70s, you had guitar, you know, you had John McLaughlin, Larry Coryell, Jeff Beck, and then of course the blues guys, Mike Bloomfield, Albert King, B.B. King, Freddie King. We opened for Freddie King. So I would start, you know, studying a column in Guitar Player magazine, and I'd be practicing these scales. But then I'd hear a riff. I got to pursue that, and then I left the study, you know, by itself, and then I just focused on following where that tune would lead me. And sometimes it's a chord change, sometimes it's a melody. It's you know, that's kind of the process, or the unprocess. I don't know. You know?
But it's on a guitar that you do this.
Most of the time. I mean, I play harmonica. That was my first instrument. I started playing harmonica when I was like in the 4th or 5th grade, because my father was a really good harmonica player. And so I started playing harmonica. And I used it. I've had a couple of tunes come from the harmonica, but again, 90% of the time, it's guitar. but we were talking earlier about New Orleans, where you're from originally, and what just an amazing city it is musically. And I was working for an electronic music company in the 80s and got to go to this great NAMM show in New Orleans. But as a kind of a bluesy, rock and roll guitar player, to all of a sudden be dealing with synthesizers now. Mm-hmm. I have written several songs from that era, because the synth had all these sounds. I'm not much of a keyboard player, but these sounds would suggest themselves. And then you play a riff, and it's right there in front of you. You can see. Yeah. It's a little different than the guitar. But I've always been impressed with people like Lennon and McCartney that can sit down at a piano. Even Neil Young can sit down at a piano and play some songs. Mm-hmm. I've never developed my keyboard chops to that degree. So.
Yeah. So we've heard you play some wonderful blues. What other genres have you written songs in?
Well, again, my first songs were kind of rock and roll, a little poppy, but then my slide song one of the first songs I wrote, it was kind of influenced by some of the British blues, because they had a whole different way of extrapolating the American blues and combining it with rock a little bit. Mm-hmm. But in the course of my life, I have written a lot of rock, pop, ballads. I've written country songs, jazzy songs. I remember there used to be a thing in New York City in the early and mid 80s called the New Music Seminar. And I remember going in the early 80s to the New Music Seminar just to try to get some tips and also rub elbows, because this was after I used to go and pitch songs in New York City to publishers. And I happened to be at this hip hop assembly. There was this kind of an afternoon program on hip hop, and I was knocked out by these cats. I mean, because hip hop kind of started in the Bronx, but there's different styles. It moved a lot all over the country. But I was so impressed with what these cats were doing that I went back home to my studio and took one of my songs and did like a couple of hip hop versions of a couple of songs. Oh. And back then I was much more open to, the what pop music was. Well, I wouldn't call hip hop pop, but I mean I was much more open to other influences, different colors.
Let's see. So your favorite topics or themes to write about? Obviously love. Love,
yes, and as yes, I would say that love is really still the prevailing topic. I don't write as much anymore. We'll talk about that. But yeah, love. But then on my journey, because if you're writing songs now for 50 years, it is a bit of a journey. And during the 70s, I started seeking. I wanted to learn a little bit more about truth and spirit, on a more cosmic scale. And right while that was going on with me personally, the movie Star Wars came out in '77, and I loved that movie because it really, for me, they're talking about other worlds, other beings. There were even rock creatures, and I was just, and then they talked about the Force, which I regard as spirit, or prana, the Holy Ghost, whatever you want to call it. But that was this essence, and so I started writing some stuff that was a little more spiritual, So I wrote about that, and then as I was mentioning, I'm not writing as much anymore these days. I mean, I've written, when you have just, I don't know how, I've never counted them, They say I have a couple of hundred, I don't know. But I've got songs that I have not ever recorded. So the need to write something fresh, although some of it's trying to come out. And I'll just say that, you know, the last several years, I've been a little distressed about the direction of our country, and it upset me. And it kind of harkened me back, you know, the summer of '70 was the Kent State shootings, the first Earth Day. The war in Vietnam was still going strong, and I was as a college student, I was very concerned about these things. And now 50 years later, I'm going, this is reminding me of some of the, you know, the pathos that we're dealing with, you know. And so the last two songs that I wrote were, in my own way, protest songs. You know, one of them is called Fix It, and you know, we got to fix it. What happened to love? You know, and that song. So I was moved to write because I felt like I needed to say something. You know. So
a variety of things during the course of your songwriting career have like gone in and you've taken them out again, whether it's love, lust, romance, or a search for reality or truth. Yeah. And now the world we're looking at these days, which is very challenging, obviously.
We need love, and you know, just what's around us. I couldn't help but draw. I mentioned this to some folks this past week, and I just saw a thing in the New York Times yesterday where, you know, everybody knows that in our Happy Valley where we live here in Easthampton and surrounding areas, we've had an inordinate amount of rain. Nothing like the poor people in Germany and Belgium, but we have had a lot of rain. And they're saying that this, you know, in the New York Times there was an article about this is related to what's happening climate-wise. And then the poor people in California, the droughts and the fires. Oh my goodness, so yeah, we need more love. And I think that when you can love and care about your fellow human being and animals and plants as well, you know, you want to do right by it, because we all have to breathe this air, you know, and drink this water and eat this food. And if we, you know, destroy our, you know, environment, I don't care how rich you are, you know, your stores are only going to last so long if you're living in some bat cave somewhere, you know. It's but I mean, I'm at the age now where I'm, you know, I've got nothing to prove. I wrote a song called "Nothing to Prove, Nothing to Lose." You know, it's an old line that Muddy Waters used. I used to try to write songs that I liked, but maybe could be covered by others. You know, back in the day, you know, the late '70s, early '80s, I would go to New York City and visit publishers. And that was an interesting phase for me. You know, I got to meet and listen and talk to a lot of, you know, people, and some very successful people. And so I had that experience, you know, the Brill building thing, you know, the famous building where Carole King and all those wonderful songwriters, you know, I got to experience, I'm not saying rubbing elbows with her, but I did get to meet a lot of good songwriters and their publishers, you know.
How did that influence you?
I mean, I just think it's a part now of my whole experience, because, you know, as I joked, you know, I am what I am, that Popeye, his motto, you know, because, I mean, I love blues guitar, you know, and I love the Allman Brothers Band. And I sat there, I mean, when they did the Mountain Jam, I mean, that song could be 40 minutes long by the time they were done. And I love jazz. I got to see a lot of the tremendous jazz greats like Miles Davis and Pharoah Sanders, you know, Freddie Hubbard, Ornette Coleman. It goes on and on and on. So I've always appreciated that. But what does that have to do with the perfect 3-minute pop song? Well, music is food to me. I don't want to just eat the same food 3 times a day. I wanted to experience. Now, one of my, I remember one publisher said, so what are you? Because you played, I've had worse things said to me too, but you know, why didn't you play this one earlier? One of my more bluesy tunes, because I played probably something a little more poppy. But I did study, you know, and I remember I asked a publisher once, so what's a hit? And he goes, a hit is a hit. Thanks. You know, but I don't really think there's right or wrong when it comes to music. I think we have our tastes. Remember one of those Indiana Jones movies where they're eating monkey brains? That scene was like, oh my gosh, you know. I'm a pretty adventurous guy.
Yeah.
You know, I've been around several places in the world, and I do enjoy trying. But I wouldn't try that.
You draw the line, huh?
But some people, they might like that. Well, that's their, you know, their prerogative, I guess. So, I saw, you know, Jimi Hendrix was one of my huge influences on guitar. The way that he took blues and kind of, I don't want to use the word synthesized it, but you kind of brought it to a more cosmic level. I remember, you know, he played Delta blues, but they were from the Martian Delta. You know what I mean? So I think you got to be true to what you love. And I went through a period where I was writing a lot of poppy songs. The country songwriters, in fact, country is one of the few genres left in our music industry where they actually still have dedicated songwriters. Now you look at the credits and there's like 12 people, the producer, you know, and the programmer, and a lot of the stuff today, you know, is not my cup of tea. You know, I don't find that the melodies are particularly memorable, and the auto-tune thing I'm not a big fan of. But as you and I had discussed, you know, in terms of, I do think that every age group deserves to have their music that they love and their parents can't stand.
Oh yeah.
You know, you know, because if your parents like it, well, maybe something's wrong with that music. You know, it's a little too schlocky or something.
Yeah,
you know, I remember taking guitar lessons for about a year from this music store in Connecticut, and in the mid-'60s, and these old big band guys who played in, you know, famous big bands were teaching at this store, the horn players and stuff, and they were, you know, grousing about the British invasion and the whole thing that was going on. And we had our music. And so the people now, I'm that old guy now. You know, I get that.
Well, what do you recommend to someone who aspires to be a songwriter, or who is a songwriter and is interested in improving their writing?
You know, I think that there are processes. For some reason, this kind of it might be a silly analogy, but you're mining and you find this precious ore, you know, and that's your song that came through, you know. There's this, and it's your vein, you know, it's your vein, and you get this. In the commercial markets, they want the ore refined. It's not as valuable, you know. I mean, isn't diamond? Doesn't it start off as coal or something like coal? I mean, it's mineral, and over years and years and years, these diamonds emerge. But and it's rough. You know, even gold. You gotta dig for the gold. So I think that these precious ideas, I encourage people to listen to what's happening inside. Because they have to observe what's going on outside. But when they take that time to be a quiet time, maybe not necessarily a contemplative time, and you hear that, whether you're just strumming and you just happen upon something, or you're washing the dishes and you hear something, taking a walk, and you pursue that. And then you decide, okay, what is this? What do I need to say? Is this a love song? No, I definitely want to write, I got to protest about the environment or the politics or something. And then there's a refining process that goes on. And if you're going to record it, and the thing about the lyrics, I mean, sometimes you don't want to give in to the easy way out with the lyrics, you know? Some of them are, you heard that phrase, and that kind of engendered the whole process. But then you go, no, I can't just say moon, June, spoon. Right. I got to dig a little deeper. And so there is a refining process, I think, that goes on in songwriting. But I think the bottom line is you got to tell your truth. And if you want to be a pop star, well, you have to write in a certain genre. If you want to be a folky or the rock and roll is definitely has receded. It's not what it was. But if you want to be a jazz artist who's writing instrumentals, you gotta do what's in your heart, because otherwise it's going to seem that's pap, you know, instead of good pop. And of course everybody's got an opinion, you know, that old saying.
Yeah, we'll never all agree on the same musical style or artist.
And tastes.
Yeah.
There are people that are great, and I can't stand that.
Yeah.
That person, they drive me crazy. I can't take. And I mean, a lot of people didn't like Dylan's voice back in the day when he really had a voice. I mean, the poor guy now is, you know, although I saw him a few years ago and he was outstanding. But you know, you listen. You know, they took his songs and they turned them into, like even the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man, beautiful production. And Peter, Paul and Mary, you know, did one of his songs. And a lot of people liked their versions better because they're more maybe refined. He was rougher.
Yeah, he sure was.
You know.
So, anything else you want to add about your songwriting or music?
I've already said probably way too much, but I would say I would encourage songwriters to, again, follow your path, and you know, when you're young, you don't really think, gee, I wonder what I'll be like when I'm 70. You know, you don't usually think about those things. You're in the here and now, and you feel immortal, and you also have your drives and your urges and your concerns are different.
Yeah.
You know, so harness that. But it is a journey, and then as you get, you know, and you look at some of these great artists that are still around, that have been writing songs, you know, like Dylan, like Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, you know, Paul McCartney. And they write from where they are now, because I think that if you try to write something that you're not, it's going to show through. That's like someone trying to dress a lot younger than they should be. Sure. Dressing, and then they become it's kind of yikes or laughable, you know, and you don't want that. But follow your truth, and then that will take you. That can lead you to so many places, and it's interesting to see some of these artists who, you know, they end up, you know, doing stuff with orchestras and stuff when they were just a singer-songwriter strumming a guitar, like Joni Mitchell, you know. So there's no right or wrong though. You know, if you like the monkey brains, okay, good for you. I don't want to listen to it or look at it.
Okay. Well, Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan, for indulging, and thank you, Ryan, for all of your help. And I appreciate what you do supporting artists. You're one yourself, and you know, it's because it can be a lonely road. You know, I don't recommend getting into this field to get rich. You know, I recommend doing it because you love it. Do what you love, and the rest follows, as they say. And it's I didn't make the big time like I thought I would, wanted to so badly, and felt like a failure for a long, long time because I didn't get to that level. I've had so many brushes, you know. Got to hang with the giants, you know, and open for them and talk to them, shake their hands and such. But I think of the collective experience that I've had and where I am now, and still playing, still loving it.
Yeah.
I'll end with this last phrase. When a friend of mine said, you know, so how come you're not writing so much anymore? And I go, because I'm happy. Not to say that you can't write joyous music either, because that's a wonderful thing.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, thank you very much. And
Thank you, sir.
Our listeners and viewers, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our show. I'd like to acknowledge the support of the Western Mass Songwriters Collaborative, promoting the original music scene in Western Massachusetts. If you want to learn more about the collaborative, go to their Facebook page. Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Dan. I hope you'll tune in again for the show that puts a spotlight on songwriters.